Andy, last weekend we put out 3 senior teams. 2 of them won, which has got to be a big improvement on where we were this time last year.
Well, yes. I mean, the 3 teams obviously play under the same banner. Last year we had a team called the B team, and then obviously Newbury Stags out, and ourselves on occasions. But this is all a pool of players, all buying into the same club, and us getting 3 sides out, which yes is the first time, and for a long time. A few weeks ago we did it, and we just sort of got there by hook or by crook. Which harks back to me being on the bench, but this last weekend was a lot easier, a lot more relaxed for me. There is even a point where we had 2 late fitness tests to do at first team level with Ash Taylor and Richard Hooper struggling with injuries, and I knew exactly what I was going to do if they didn't come through. The Stags were playing at home, and it was simply just a question of drafting guys from that team into the first team. We wouldn't have been able to do that last year. So it sort of makes for a more relaxed morning. It's not ideal, but you know that there are options available to you without too much hassle. So yeah, we were able to do that last week, and obviously Stags continued to their winning run now. They beat Teutonians away a few weeks ago, and then battled hard against Havant and snuck it with a last play, I think, with something like 24-19. So Toby Thorne scoring a last minute try, which doesn't surprise me. So now they've won 2 games, and they've sort of moved up that league. This week they play a Portsmouth side that sits just above them with 3 wins, but Portsmouth have also been beaten heavily by the 2 top sides, more than the Stags were. So I would hope that they could go down to Portsmouth and give a good account of themselves. The Mighty A's continue to run in quite a big score against Hungerford's second team over there. Paul Lister, who's been away from rugby for a little while. I coached him when he was a bit younger. Scored 5 tries, and so has obviously had a field day and needs to move up. But somehow somebody in the A's said he had an appalling game and he wasn't ready to move up yet. Trying to hang on to their star man for another week. And they play here this weekend against Whitney Force, who are second in their league. So it's another key game for them. They beat, trying to remember the name now, Drifters the other week when they were second or equal top. So they've beat one of the rivals, and this is the next rival, and they've got to beat them, opening maybe a little bit of a gap between them and the others then. But clearly it's a successful team. Lots of people want to make themselves available. Some of the older guys are prepared to come out for half a game and remember how it was done in their day. But it's good that that they're going well. And then obviously the first team, another disappointing loss, particularly when we look at the video footage. And I've spoken to a couple of people about it, and it does sound as if we're making excuses. But what we're trying to do with this video footage is sort of highlight to the players that the scoreline is one thing, and we do have, we can't get away from what the scoreline says. But when you break it down into smaller packages, but for lapses of concentration, but for poor communication, and when you're attacking, finishing off chances, the score is not a lot. You could almost argue a case for winning. When you look at how many tries we really butchered in the first half, and then when you look at the way we conceded tries in both halves, there were sloppy tries, 2 people going for the same man. We've talked about that in the past, but it just is killing us every single time. So we're not getting absolutely annihilated by sides. The scoreline sometimes suggests that. To a point, actually, I'll let everybody know, I wrote a letter of complaint to the rugby paper on Sunday morning. Those that get the rugby paper, good for you. I read in the National 3 Southwest section that we were brutally hammered by Newton Abbott. When all I can recall any reporter from the rugby paper knowing was the score and the scorers as given to them by me after the game. When they rang me up, asked me what the score was, who scored for either side, that was it. But from that they chose to decide that we were brutally hammered. So at which point I wrote an email to the editor and asked why that assumption was made. Suggested that the scoreline did show that it was a convincing win for Newton Abbott, but if he'd asked anybody that was there whether they felt that Newbury were brutally hammered. I think they'd probably find most people saying no, actually. They conceded some silly tries and they could have scored some more themselves. So I asked him and his reporters to stick to the facts in future, unless they were there in person, whether they could make that assumption having seen the game.
Okay, and have you heard anything back?
Well, he said thank you for your, so I will be writing another one. I mean, he acknowledged it on Sunday, which was good for him to acknowledge it so quickly, but I'd like for him to sort of acknowledge that he would have spoken to his reporters and asked them to stick to the facts, as far as I'm concerned.
Indeed so. So how are the plans for Chippenham?
Obviously we've got the three sides out again, and that is always a lot of hard work for me and Brian Trott and Will Gibb and Steve Pace. They're the guys that sort of looking down at the A team, and you know, whether we like it or not, the fact that they're playing well does allow for us to pull people up into the second team if we're having to pull them into the first team. Each week I ask all the players, certainly the ones that are making a regular contribution, to let me know their availability, and the vast majority do, and rather irritatingly, the ones in the lower sides are the ones that reply, and the ones where you would expect a little bit more commitment in the first team don't. Now that's for me to deal with, but it is very, very frustrating, because I'm sitting here now knowing the sort of team I would like to put out, but actually until I get a text, email, phone call, whatever from 2 or 3 of the players, I'm not 100% sure of their fitness and their availability. They don't live locally, they're either at university or they live away, and they do come to training, but I need to know they're coming to training before I can pick them for Saturday. So a little bit frustrating there. We picked up a couple of injuries. Alex Kane hurt his ankle at the weekend, so that would be he won't be playing, and then Ash and Hooper are still struggling in the second row. Ben Lewison's not available, who we sort of press ganged in to go into the second row. And actually, to be fair, with him in the second row with Tom Erskine, and then the front row that we had of Paul Hawkins and Luke Soinali, it's probably the heaviest front five we've had all season. And for the first time, we were starting to give the opposition a little bit of trouble on occasion.
Yeah.
So it's a shame that Ben's not around, because we probably would have gone with that option again. We still had line-out options, because Tom can jump, and obviously with Paul Jones and Alex Ashburn in the side, we still had line-out options. So that's something for us to consider. But yeah, Alex Kane unavailable. Reese is on holiday, so we might have to. Well, we'll probably pull Tom Martin back into the team, who had a nice little run out in the Stags last week, get a bit of confidence back. But we might have to drag him back into the team to show us whether that confidence has given him some confidence for first team rugby.
Okay, thanks, Andy.